Welcome in, guys. Blind Tasting Podcast. This is John, and I want to talk about something today that I think's actually kind of interesting about the whiskey world, and it has to do with why I will not be attending Bourbon and Beyond in 2026. And you're like, Stark, what's Bourbon and Beyond anyway? Well, listen close, guys, because this is all I'm going to say about it. Bourbon and Beyond. It happens every single year. It's a 4-day event in Louisville, Kentucky. It's built around bourbon. They've got a lot of music and food, a lot of branded whiskey activity. It is extremely expensive to go. Think hedge fund manager. And before anybody asks, yes, I know exactly when it is in 2026. I'm just not telling y'all. And that's intentional. Now, before anybody starts firing up their keyboards and typing, "Oh, wow, John, it sounds like somebody's salty. Somebody's butthurt." Let me stop you guys. Just stop right there. This is not a salty situation, and I'm not pissed off per se. This is more of a head scratcher to me. It's one of those WTF moments, really. Because from a marketing standpoint, I genuinely think this is one of those situations where a company or an organization or Bourbon and Beyond, they had a chance to get some free publicity, some free coverage, and maybe even a little goodwill from a bunch of whiskey freaks out here. And instead, they just kind of stepped over $1 to pick up a nickel. Let me explain. This is how it went down. This is what happened. A while back, I reached out to the good folks at Bourbon and Beyond, and I asked about media passes. This is pretty standard stuff, guys. Festivals do this all the time for podcasts and YouTube channels and journalists and bloggers, whiskey reviews, all the like. If you're covering the industry, you apply for credentials, you show them what you do, and if they think you're worthy, they give you a pass so you can cover the event. It's a pretty simple system that works really well, and it's a win-win for everybody involved. So I sent them my information. I told them about the podcast. I explained what I do, gave them the download numbers. I showed them all the audience information, the whole deal. And look, I'm under no illusion here. I'm not Joe Rogan, and you're definitely not going to mistake my podcast for Pat McAfee. I'm not some giant whiskey YouTube influencer either. I don't have a channel with a bajillion subscribers. I'm just what I'd call myself a smaller voice in the whiskey world. But here's the thing that a lot of these big organizations, these big companies, these big boys, here's something that they often forget. The smaller voices talk to people too. The Blind Tasting Podcast might not be the biggest show out there, but I've thankfully got a loyal group of listeners. People who love whiskey. People who buy whiskey. People who travel around the country for whiskey. People who go to festivals. The exact demographic Bourbon and Beyond is trying to reach. So I applied for the media pass. And mind you, I've done this many times for other festivals. It's usually all good. Usually. But this one here, this situation was, I will graciously call it a process. Others might describe it as bullshit. But me, I'd never call it that. Now this process, it has been a steady stream of emails, requests, links, metrics, audience stats, follow-ups, then more follow-ups, then somehow even more information going back the other direction and coming back. Guys, I got to say, it's incredibly efficient what they do. That is, if you're trying to simulate a tennis match that goes on forever with no scoreboard. That's what this was. At one point, it actually started to feel a little like applying for a home mortgage. And again, I'm not bitching here. It's fine. I get it. They probably get a lot of requests for this, right? They got to filter people out. Totally reasonable. Then eventually the answer comes back to me. No. No media pass. Now let me be clear about something. They have every right in the world to say no. It's their event. They can invite whoever they want. They can deny whoever they want. They run the whole thing, basically, however they see fit. No complaints there. But here's the part I find interesting. What exactly would it have cost them to say yes? I mean, a media pass, it's not a barrel pick. This is not a VIP experience with a limo and a personal bartender. It's a ticket. It's a basic ticket. A ticket that allows somebody in the media, like me, or any podcaster or any news outlet to walk around, drink some bourbon, listen to some music, and talk about the event. And the way I do things here, guys, I talk about it leading up to the event, after the event. I give you all the deets. I might even have some people on to tell you about it. You're going to get the vibe, all the things. Probably a really good review of the whole deal, too. Good stuff for all parties involved. And if you think about it from a marketing perspective, that's kind of the whole point, right? You want people talking about your event. You want coverage. You want buzz. You want somebody saying, hey, whiskey freaks, I went to Bourbon Beyond this weekend. It was awesome. Here's what it was like. Because that turns into something very valuable. Authenticity. Authentic word of mouth. And here's the funny part. If they'd approved that pass, I probably would have done a whole episode about the festival, about the walking around, talking about the distilleries, reviewing the pours, maybe even grabbing a couple interviews. And that's the kind of coverage events love, right? And it cost them basically nothing. But instead, the process became this long series of hoops to jump through that ultimately ended with basically a middle finger. Which again, it's their choice. But for where I sit, it just feels like a missed opportunity for them. Because the whiskey world is not just giant influencers and massive media outlets. It's also a bunch of us smaller voices who actually talk to real drinkers every single week. I'm talking about podcasters, local reviewers, writers, folks on Facebook and Instagram and X and all the places, right? These are people that are deeply plugged into the whiskey community. And those voices matter. And it's not because they're huge. It's because they're trusted. The folks listening to this show here today, you know that when I talk about a bottle or an event or a distillery, I'm not reading a script somebody wrote for me. I'm telling you what I think, no BS. And y'all know sometimes that means a glowing hell yes. And sometimes that means it's less than complimentary. And for me, that's part of the fun. And ironically, like I already said, if I'd gone to Bourbon and Beyond with a media pass, chances are the coverage would have been pretty damn positive. It's a big event. Like, think about this. Lots of distilleries, lots of music, lots of bourbon. It's not exactly a difficult environment to enjoy, guys. So when the answer came back to me as no, my reaction honestly wasn't anger. It was more like, that's an interesting choice. Because this podcast here, Blind Tasting Podcast, like a lot of smaller whiskey shows, it's built around exactly the kind of audience that events like Bourbon and Beyond wants to reach. People who care about whiskey. People who seek out whiskey experiences. And it really is about all the experiences, guys. That's what it's about. And it's about people who might say, hey, that actually sounds fun. Maybe I should go next year. And that's marketing. And again, I'm not saying they owe me anything because they don't. But if you're running an event that celebrates bourbon culture, it seems like bringing in more voices from, bourbon culture, that might be a pretty good idea. Especially when those voices are offering to do the coverage basically for free. So the end result of this futile exercise I went through, it's simple. And this is my whole point today, guys. I will not be attending or even speaking one more word on this podcast about Bourbon and Beyond. And it's not out of spite, and it's not out of anger. It's just because if I'm going to go to an event like that, it's usually because I'm there to cover it. That's part of the fun. Walking around, talking to regular folks, talking to distillers, telling the whiskey freaks what's happening at this kind of an event. And without that angle, it's just another expensive weekend for me. And honestly, there are a lot of ways we can all spend a whiskey weekend, so to speak, right? You can visit a distillery. You can do local tastings, support your local bar, right? You can go on bottle hunts. You name it. There's all kinds of things you can do to spend your money. So for me, this one just didn't line up. But I will say this. If the folks at Bourbon and Beyond ever decide they want coverage from a group of extremely dedicated whiskey folks, y'all know where to find me. And if you don't, that's all right too. Because the whiskey world is a very big place. And there's plenty to talk about without the good folks over at Bourbon and Beyond.